Let's bring in Chris Wallace. He's Fox News Sunday anchor. And I don't know if this is the first time on the show, but we're glad to have you and hope to have you more often. The president just returned from a successful trip to Asia. China had just sent an envoy to North Korea. And I would imagine that Kim Jong-un was thinking, wait a second, I got to get control of this narrative because I want to be getting the attention. And he got it after yesterday's launch.
Yeah, you say a successful trip to Asia. It certainly had all of the trappings of a successful trip. But what's most important is there a strategy? And we can't do it. We basically are sanctioned out on North Korea. We do need help from Russia. We do need help from China. And we don't know, in terms of you talking about the successful trip, whether or not Xi Jinping has decided, I'm really going to try to tighten the screws on North Korea. And even if he were to do so, is that enough to get Kim to turn back? There's some people who believe, a lot of very sophisticated analysts who believe that Kim has decided as an existential way to preserve his regime that he has got to develop a nuclear capability. It's the only way to ensure that he won't be deposed by the U.S. And our allies.
It's interesting you bring that up because I was just looking at the Washington Post article this morning. There's a guy named Song Zhejiang, and he's a military expert, and he said if China imposes heavier sanctions, that would be symbolic at best, I think. China has a bottom line. Don't affect the life of the North Korean people on humanitarian principles. It gives them things like oil and food to allow people there to survive. So that also becomes difficult because how much more can sanctions work if China is going to draw that line?
Yeah, the North Korea borders China. It in effect borders China's Rust Belt, its industrial heart. And the greatest concern of China in this regard is if you have a collapse of the Kim regime in North Korea, you could get millions of people flooding over the border from North Korea into China, which would be obviously very destabilizing there. Look, if this is one of these situations where if there was an easy solution, we would have reached it a long time ago.
Indeed.
China has its own national concerns. Kim has his own national concerns. And there are real limits to what we can do. And, you know, we talk about the military option, where some people do very blithely. There are 25 million people in Seoul. Seoul is 30 miles from the North Korean border, and there are thousands of rockets and artillery shells in North Korea. If they fired them, literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people would die within instants. This would be one of the great bloodbaths in human history.
And as Jennifer just mentioned, of course, we have the Olympics coming up in just a couple of months here, so they'll be in Seoul, Korea. If I could just ask you quickly about tax reform. This was the big week that the Republicans had to put up or shut up. They got the bill out of committee yesterday. There are now 7 members in the Senate on the Republican side who say that they have concerns. I don't think that means necessarily that they will ultimately vote against the bill. But really, the Republicans can only afford to lose 2 if none of the Democrats are going to vote with them. How do you see it shaping up?
It's tough. And let me give you just one example. Bob Corker of Tennessee, one of the key votes. They're all key votes. Desperately does not want to see a huge increase to the deficit. It already is a $1.5 trillion. He says, look, we don't really know what the growth is going to be. The people in the Trump administration say it'll pay for itself. He wants a trigger. If the growth numbers aren't as good as the Trump administration projects they'll be, then there would be an increase in taxes in 2024, 2025 to make sure it doesn't add even more to the deficit. But then you've got John Kennedy, a Republican senator from Louisiana, who said colorfully today, I would rather drink weed killer than approve a tax increase. So the point is, if you do something to satisfy Senator Corker, it may be something that loses you the support of Senator Kennedy. And that's going to be true throughout this.
It's a teeter-totter.
Yeah, a trade-off for one may lose you another vote.
That's right. And the trigger issue is a big one, too. Chris Wallace, thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet.
And everyone, be sure to tune into Fox News Sunday this weekend. Chris will sit down with National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. Fox News Sunday airs at 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern on Fox News Channel. And also check your local listings for earlier programming. Chris Wallace, thanks.